The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
You want some bad news, Michael?
No.
What are you asking me?
You're the guru of the gray matter. I figured if anybody had it, you'd have the answer.
I can't give you any direction.
I think I'm going to have to change this channel. I'm sorry.
You're completely wrong.
I refuse to be wrong on 2 calls in a row.
Tell me I'm spot on or tell me I'm crazy as all get out.
I have no idea.
I have a 6-month-old, so we'll be raising him according to Dr. Ray.
Talk about being a winner.
So, you want my question?
You ain't making any sense.
You're absolutely right. I just needed confirmation.
So what are you going to do about it, Dawn?
I'm calling you.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Hey, Andrew, that guru of the gray matter. See if we can get somebody to call in and say you're the wizard of the white matter. I would like that. You know, the certain myelin sheaths that surrounds the neurons. Very nice to have you here on The Doctor Is In. I'm Dr. Ray Guarendi. This is our standard Friday variant. Look Back Friday. I'm looking at the calls up there. These are previous calls. Now, somebody said to me just this week, they said, Friday, that's when you replay previous calls, right? And I would like to think it's more than that. First of all, we don't replay those calls in their entirety. Andrew just informed me before going on to the show here. He said, I had to cut you off on a couple of those calls because you just kept going. I hope he didn't cut off any of the important stuff. But typically on these calls, I want to add stuff. And it can be any number of things. It can be a definition of a word that somebody used. It can be a direction that I didn't have time to go in because obviously there were people waiting to get on the air. It can be something that is related to the call, but it would take me too far afield to talk about it during the call. For any number of reasons, those calls make Look Back Friday. Now, I'm looking at them up here, and I can kind of see why I chose those calls because I'm thinking, yeah, I can see where I'm going to go with that when we replay this call. And furthermore, the vast majority of people don't listen to every radio show. Most radio is catch as catch can. So it's unlikely that if you're listening right now, you will have heard those calls. Somewhat, I don't even remember them. I have to listen to them again to spur my memory as to why they were chosen for Look Back Friday. But we'll get to that. I read a fascinating article, and you'll experience this if you go into any grocery store. When I was in high school, I worked at a place called Carm's Foods, owned by a guy named Carmen Sarno, I think was his name. Carm's Foods was a very, very, very popular place. By today's standards for grocery stores, it was a mom and pop shop. But at that time, for example, on Saturdays, I worked the 9 to 2 shift on Saturdays, and we had, I'd say probably 75 carts. It was not unusual for people to be waiting near the checkout counters or outside on a nice day for a cart to become available because the carts were gone. That's how popular this place was. We had a freezer case that was maybe 25, 30 feet long. And in it were various flavors of ice cream. Some ice cream novelties, the little dilly bars or whatever else was in there, maybe 8 or 10 choices. And Carm's Foods was a very, very popular, well-populated grocery store. You could take Carm's right now and stick it 10 to 12 times, maybe more, inside the grocery stores that are out there now. Now, what does this do? There is psychological research that indicates the more choices you have, the more it can cause you angst, an unsettling feeling. How do you know you're getting the best one? How do you even know you're getting the best buy? The healthiest one. You look at these freezer cases, 30, 40 feet long, maybe 50, and that's just the ice cream novelties. Because the freezer case is two sides of two different aisles that are 70 feet long. How do you choose? It's overwhelming. Is the human brain able to wrap itself around that many options? You go to buy a car, and you're thinking, all right, I'm going to buy a new car. First time in my life, I'm going to buy a new car. Come on, confess. You know that can be an unsettling experience. Why? You getting the best deal? What about the best car? You know? Did you read up on it? Did you find out which ones have the best reputation for the least mechanical problems? Which ones handle the best? Which ones have the longest lifetime? All of that is there. And there's so many options that it's unsettling to try to narrow it down. I experienced this. I walk into a grocery store. The one time my wife lets me shop. She lets me shop every once in a while because I come home with usually 5 or 6 different kinds of candy, several kinds of potato chips, some pretzels. She'll say, "Did you get milk and eggs?" "What? Milk and eggs? What? Why? Do we need them?" "Here, honey, I got this stuff here. I got chocolate peanut butter." Yeah, she didn't let me go anymore, so I'm not so dumb, am I? But I look at these options and I think, I don't know. So there is research that indicates that kind of wide choice can be very unsettling for people. It truly can. Because we want the security of knowing we made the best decision. And how can you know that when there are simply so many alternatives? You can't know it. So you choose it. You say, well, I like this. And most of the time you live with it and you're fine. You don't go into some kind of panic attack because you didn't know what flavor ice cream to pick, or maybe should you get something that's sugar-free, or should you get various other kinds of ice milk, or all the different ways there are to make ice cream. Should you get those? Or should you go with the straight stuff? Or should you go with the heavy, high-fat stuff? Who knows? I forget what the psychologists call it. They give a name to it. Psychologists name everything. But there's a name to the unsettled feeling that comes from facing a wide variety of options and not really being sure which one would be the most satisfactory. I'm sure I could look it up. Andrew could look it up. He's there right now. He's not doing anything because we're not taking any calls. We're doing lookbacks. Maybe I'll give it a name. I'll give it too many choice anxiety. This is Dr. Ray.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically owned shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
The following program is brought to you in part by MyCatholicWill.com. Surveys show that more than half of Americans do not have a will. At MyCatholicWill.com, it takes as little as 15 minutes to write your will and secure a legacy of faith. MyCatholicWill.com is the exclusive online destination for creating a Catholic will. The process of writing a will is simple and now more accessible than ever. MyCatholicWill.com, a legacy of faith for those you love.
He was a mystic and reformer who died at the age of 33.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Catherine of Siena accomplished something no one thought possible. She convinced Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome after the popes had lived in France for almost the whole of the 14th century. They've been there ever since.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
In her diary, St. Faustina wrote, "If only I had a spiritual director from the beginning, I would not have wasted so many of God's graces. If even the saints needed spiritual guidance, how much more do we?" The nonprofit Revive app lets you meet virtually with certified spiritual companions, scheduling sessions at your convenience, helping you grow closer to Christ. Your first 2 sessions are free. Download the Revive app today. That's REVIV, and then the number 3.
Thank you so much for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. It's Dr. Ray Grandi. The program is a co-production of the Ave Maria Radio Network in Ann Arbor and the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, some 400-plus stations domestically, 500-plus in the world, as well as so many apps, and I believe Sirius Satellite, Channel 130. So, delighted to have you with me. This is Look Back Friday, so let's see our first call. I want it to be... I remember the topic came up. Somebody called in and said, why can some people be so hard to take advice? Why do they resist it? Why do they get defensive? And we talked a little bit about all the various factors, all the personality traits and habits that can make one less likely to hear what somebody else has to say, even when it's for their own good. Well, Tony from Indiana had his theory about why some don't like advice.
My comment, I just want to agree with you. And the reason being, I recall being a young child and I was chastising my sister for a moral action that she did, and she said, well, Tony, you will not understand because you've never been through this. And I told her, well, I have never been burned by fire, but I don't have to have done that to know that the fire is hot and it will hurt. I believe that people say this because of shame. Shame is a very pervasive thing that forces us to only take advice from a certain... It forces us to do a great many of things, but the idea that you must walk a mile in my shoes is only because of shame. I feel, or a person feels more easy speaking to someone who has been through it than someone who has not, and that is because of shame. Now, how do we get here?
Hold on a second, Tony. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. I need some clarification. Okay. What do you mean by they feel shame if they're talking to somebody who hasn't had their experience? What do you mean by shame?
Well, someone a person who does an action that is questionable. If you seek advice from a person, I'll give you a good example. One, maybe even myself, if I have a choice of finding a counselor, this counselor has been married for 40 years, has 6 great kids and all the children went to college and have successful, happy lives and successful, happy relationships, or the other counselor who I have a choice for. This counselor was divorced at 25. This counselor may have had other made similar poor choices as me. I feel comfortable, and there's a little or no shame in speaking to this counselor because he, quote unquote, has walked a mile in my shoes. It's not about the qualifications, because a reasonable and prudent person would say, I should choose the first counselor because he has navigated life with better success than I have.
Tony, let me throw you a curveball. The counselor who's been divorced and has made the same mistakes as you made, what makes you think they'll have any better guidance than the person who has lived better?
I do not. I think the person who has lived better would give me better guidance.
You just wouldn't feel as bad going to the other person who, in your mind, was as wretched as you were.
Exactly. And that shame. That shame is the one that makes me not think so reasonably.
Okay.
The shame affects my decision, and we need to get over that.
All right, so I got that angle, that motive, which is I'm going to be emotionally reluctant to hear what you have to say because I'm struggling and you're not. So in your advice, I'm sensing that there is some judgment there, that you're telling me I'm living poorly or making bad decisions because you don't make those decisions. Is that what you're saying?
For the most part, I'm sure that a good many part of this, they would say yes, it's because I think you are judgmental. But in whole, I think we wouldn't even consider the possibility of this said counselor even being able to understand all of the nuances of the depths of my decisions. We wouldn't even consider him capable of understanding because of those two things. One is the shame, and we don't think he's competent because he has not experienced what we have.
I'll tell you what, my friend, if I had to experience as a counselor everything everybody came to me with, I would be a babbling mess. I would be of no good to anybody whatsoever if I can only, quote-unquote, emotionally relate to what they're saying. But at the same time, because I'm not in their shoes, I can't give them good guidance. Most of the people who come to me, Tony, I've not experienced any of that. So to say that somehow my advice would be somewhat deficient because I haven't exactly paralleled their experience, I'm gonna have to ponder that one, Tony. Oh boy, I made notes on that the whole time, and now I realize why I selected that call. The phrase is, it's not a phrase, it's an axiom. Dumb people don't learn from their mistakes. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Really smart people learn from the mistakes of others. So when Tony said, I don't have to put my hand over an oven fire to know I can get burned, I can either speculate that's what will happen given my experiences or my reservoir of knowledge of heat and pain, or having seen someone else do something so foolish. I think it is important. I've had a lot of people come in my office, and they've had previous counselors. And they tell me what they were told, and I try to understand why they were told that. And then they will share that this particular counselor had a number of really sad, ugly twists and turns in their lives, many of which were self-induced. And I think to myself, if someone cannot make the kinds of judgments that would help their life go better, I don't have as much confidence that they can give me workable guidance for my own life. Now, one might say, well, they've got the knowledge, they just didn't carry it out. It's one thing to have head knowledge, but they just didn't have social behavioral knowledge. Okay, I could buy some of that. But the question that needs to be asked was, did they even have the knowledge? Why did they think that now they've been divorced 3 times and they're a marriage counselor would help them in some way relate to their clients? A lot of it comes down to what they think they can offer someone in that situation. I was 25 years old, and I was doing an internship at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Brecksville, Ohio. My supervisor said, Ray, I want you to have a group with the guys. We had day treatment. These are guys who came during the day for this program and then went to their apartments or wherever else they lived, supervised settings, group homes, after 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I started my group. And I figured, okay, I'm moving along here, heading toward my psychological experience of a PhD. This is good. I didn't have it yet, but I'm getting there. About 8 guys in there. Big, tatted-up dude comes in, sits down, kind of slams himself down as if to say, I'm here. What are you going to tell me? So I started talking, and he interrupts me. You ever been in prison? No. Actually, I didn't do that. I said, no, I haven't. You know what it's like? I said, well, I've talked to a lot of guys about what it's like. You ever lived it? No, I never lived it. How old are you? I'm 25. I wanted to say I'm 25 and a half, but I don't think that would have made a whole lot of difference. He said, what are you going to tell me then? And I said, well, the fact that I've never been in prison means that maybe I found some ways to successfully navigate life so that I didn't end up in prison. He didn't care, but he didn't like that. His attitude was, you don't walk in my shoes, as Tony here was talking about in his previous call. You don't walk in my shoes, you got nothing to say to me. Now, my experience when somebody flings that at you is that that's their way of invalidating what you said because they don't want to hear it. If you told them what they wanted to hear in terms of what their bent is and you affirmed their bent, well, I think you do need to leave your wife and 5 kids. Seek your own happiness. That's what's important, your own happiness. Your kids will do just fine. Well, then he wouldn't question whether I've been divorced, or he wouldn't question my religion, because I agreed with him. I affirmed him, to use the psychobabble word. But if I would say something that would either open up a question about what he's doing, then he could pull out his right bar, for those of you who play euchre, his trump card, and say, well, you've never been in my shoes. You don't know. You've never been in my shoes. Think about priests. They're not married. They don't have kids. Wow. They're not women. Who can they help? Oh, for heaven's sake. If you're gonna narrow it down to, you got to have my circumstances. And one other thing about circumstances, nobody has the exact same circumstances. Somebody who has a child that's extremely, extremely difficult for them, by temperament, really, really difficult. Well, if I have kids, but they're not difficult like that, well, does that mean I can't relate to them because my circumstances are different? I mean, I've got kids that's sort of the same, but they don't have quite that kind of kid. Yeah, watch out. Don't say that to people. If you haven't walked in my shoes, don't talk.
the EWTN Family Prayer with Father Joseph.
Family, a prayer that we pray together is a powerful prayer. So please pray together with me our EWTN Family Prayer. Today we pray for those who have diabetes. Almighty God, we worship you, our Father, and we pray this day for those who suffer with diabetes. Look upon your children with this illness and grant them relief. Give them patience and the grace of perseverance in taking care of their health. Show them the way to physical and spiritual well-being. Let their cry come to your ears and bring them healing in mind and body and soul. We ask this in the holy name of Jesus, your Son. Amen.
Are we always obliged to obey our conscience? The Catholic Catechism asserts that we are always obliged to obey the certain judgment of our conscience, and that if we deliberately act against a good conscience, we condemn ourselves. On the other hand, our moral conscience may remain in ignorance, and thus we can make erroneous judgments about acts performed in the future or those performed in the past. If ignorance is caused by personal responsibility or negligence, we are culpable of the sin we commit. Some of the causes of erroneous judgment can be ignorance of Christ and his gospel, bad examples of peers, enslavement to one's passion, rejection of the Church's authority and her teaching, lack of conversion, and lack of charity. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
Computers can figure out all kinds of problems. Many of them faster than we can, of course. Except the things in the world that just don't add up. And that's where we human beings come in. This is Look Back Friday, a variant of The Doctor Is In, which comes to you Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Previous calls, and then commented on more. Now, I'm looking at this call thinking, given the amount of time right now, I may have to take this call past the break after we take our hard break. This is Randall. He's wondering if he had a panic attack. An interesting question.
Well, I was on a cruise a couple of weeks ago, and it was about a 7-hour drive to get there. We had a little complication getting there. Of course, got to get through the check-in process. It was the first time I'd been on a cruise. And after we got settled in, I went to the room, and I was laying across the couch. My wife was doing some things, and she said my eyes just fixed straight ahead, and I kind of had a weird feeling to begin with, and then my eyes fixed, and I had something a weird feeling that started at the top of my head and went all the way to my feet, and I could feel it. And she said my eyes fixed, and I turned a weird gray color. And she started slapping me, and I don't remember any of that. But it didn't last very long, a couple minutes. But then after it passed, I came to myself, and I said, "What happened?" And I felt weak, and I had a lack of energy ever since. And I was talking to a guy who works for a counseling company. He's not a counselor, but he sees a lot of that, and he told me that I had a panic attack. And I was just wondering what you thought about it.
I wouldn't be so quick to say that. First of all, you may have, of course, and there's reason to think that it was building, and we'll get to that in a second. Typically, when somebody has very, very weird kind of reactions like that, if they're where they can, they'll go to the emergency room. They'll think, "Oh, okay, something's really wrong here, and I don't know what it is. Never felt like this before. Yeah. My wife is noticing me doing weird things." Head for the emergency room. And most of the time, they get a clean bill of health. So let's say that nothing was wrong. Nothing was physically wrong. We can't know that because you didn't get any kind of exam. However, you said it went away, the intensity of it went away, but then you said you still felt odd for a long time after that?
I was sort of off balance. Kept spilling things, even that night and the next day, which I don't normally do.
I wouldn't be so quick to call that a panic attack. Typically, a panic attack is not going to lead you to that kind of uncoordination, especially after. But that's long since passed. You've not had any episodes like that since?
No, I haven't. No, sir.
Okay. No. Well, then let's look at maybe there was something temporary. Low blood sugar, some kind of heart palpitations or something. There are physical things that can cause it. I'm not a doctor, but I've read up on it, and that may have passed. Now, if it happens again, I would suggest you definitely go. Now let's go ahead. Please go ahead. She wants you to. Right?
My wife's been trying to get me to go to the doctor. I probably need to get it checked even now.
Okay, and it could be high blood pressure. Real high blood pressure can really screw you up too. If your blood pressure
well,
is...
that was my next question. I've had a problem with high blood pressure. It's been borderline, and I wondered about that too.
Well, let's assume that it was your body reacting for some reason, but there was nothing identifiably seriously wrong. Okay, here's what you described. You said it was a long drive. And I'm going to assume that during this long drive, you were tense. You were thinking, are we going to get there in time? I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where do I park? All these kind of what-ifs were floating around. Yeah, okay, so you were getting yourself agitated, even though you may not have felt heavily agitated. It was a long stretch of arousal. So that's first thing. Secondly, you got into an unfamiliar situation. You know, when you go do a cruise, man, I'll tell you what, you got to go over here, you got to go over there, you got to watch this line, you got to do that line. What am I supposed to do with this? They want my passport. All of these unknowns and things you've never done before. It's kind of like the first time at a big airport on steroids. So you're already agitated, and now you're trying to navigate a situation that's completely unfamiliar. All right. So you definitely were brewing arousal in your body. You get to your stateroom,
makes sense.
You lay down, and it surges. For whatever the reason, that happens. Now, it's quite common in a panic attack that prior to it, there had been a buildup of stressor. It's kind of like an engine, you know. You put your foot on the gas, you put your foot on the gas, you put your foot on the gas, and finally, you put it too hard, and the engine just goes and goes into the red zone. Okay, so if it was a panic attack, it's very explainable by what led up to it. That is one of the common reasons that someone will have this inexplicable surge of anxiety, which can come with some physical symptoms. It can. You can feel lightheaded. You can labored breathing, even some fuzziness with your eyes. Certainly that can happen. There's something that struck me listening to that again. And even though I didn't get specific about it, I didn't throw it out as a potential cause, the thing that Randall said that kind of nudged me uncomfortably was that he was dropping stuff. He's off balance, that kind of thing. I didn't mention a transient ischemic attack, which is a small stroke, and it can pass. It can certainly pass, but it does do those kinds of odd things. And he said, I wasn't aware. And in a TIA, that can be one of the signs that zoning out for some small period of time. The lack of coordination. He's talking about, I'm feeling kind of wobbly, or I'm not holding on to things right. I would think, and again, I'm not talking to Randall now, and it's good that his wife wanted him to go see a doctor because that's what he should have done. But perhaps a neurologist to see if, in fact, he had a small TIA, given that. And I'm surprised at that point when we had Randall's call, which was probably a couple months ago. Some doctor didn't call in and say, Ray, you didn't even throw out TIA as a possibility. And you're right, I didn't. Okay, so I was too busy explaining the genesis of a panic attack, if that's what it was. So I'm hoping that he went and got a good look-see.
Looking for a more peaceful family by Christmas? Join Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak for a free live webinar, Have a More Peaceful Family by Christmas. It's Thursday, November 13th from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Discover practical ways to reclaim Advent with purpose, prayer, and joy. Don't let Advent slip by in stress and distraction. Join the Popchaks and turn this season into a sacred success story. Register now at AveMariaRadio.net and make this Advent your most intentional yet.
Christ is the Answer with Father John Riccardo.
He always starts with the good things. You know, the 7 letters to the churches and the book of Revelation is a great way to write letters to other people, by the way, or to have conversations with other people. You start with what's going well. You do this, this, and this really well. I love it. Thank you. Here's what you're lacking. And I think for many of us as men, what the Lord's communicating at that second part of the letter or the second part of the conversation is, here's what we're lacking. You don't ever spend enough time with me. You have no idea what I'm trying to offer you in the gift of my friendship. Or if you do, you don't make time for it. And if you would but come to me, I would change your life like that. But you don't come. Not with the regularity that I want you to come. Not with the ardor and the fervor and the passion that I want you to come. I have a hunch, I have more than a hunch, that's what he says to me, and I got a hunch that's what he would say to many of us.
Maybe you've been hearing a lot about the need to make a spiritual communion while participating from home in a live-streamed or broadcast Mass. Maybe you've even prayed the prayer of spiritual communion. Spiritual communion is a concept that goes all the way back to the 4th century. It flourished in the Eastern Church and gradually moved west. Spiritual communion stresses the transcendence of God, where we unite our desires, intentions, and loves with the holy sacrifice of the Mass and the consecration of the Eucharist at the altar. Jesus, I embrace you and unite myself wholly to you.
My problem is I belong to so many of those anonymous groups. Everybody knows who I am. Hey, aren't you in the procrastinators group? Aren't you in the group of hoarding? Aren't you in the group of relationships? Good to have you with me here on The Doctor's In. I'm Dr. Ray Guarendi. Website, drray.com, drray.com. 17 books listed there for your perusal, if you're interested in taking a look at them. This is Look Back Friday, where we take previous calls. Do you notice how I include you in that? We forced teaming. That's a phrase used by a guy named Gavin DeBecker, who wrote a book called The Gift of Fear, and he says, trust your instincts when things don't seem quite right. And forced teaming is a tactic oftentimes used with someone who has bad intent. Barb is on antidepressants. And Barb's question is, shouldn't God be enough?
A little background. I've been on an antidepressant for about 20 years, since after my father passed away. And I feel pretty good when I'm on it. But I was in a really dark place before. But lately, the doctor has been saying, my family doctor has been saying, you can go off that anytime you want. So I tried it, and I went off of it, but I feel like I'm going back to that same place. But I just kind of felt like maybe my faith should fill in that area that I shouldn't need to take an antidepressant. And, I'm confused about whether or not to go back, take it again. Shouldn't my faith be enough?
Well, you're asking two questions here, Barb.
I know.
All right.
I'm confused.
Well, I am too, but I'm going to do everything I can to get unconfused and take you with me.
Okay.
You were first prescribed the meds after your husband passed away.
My father.
Your father, I'm sorry. Your father.
Yes.
And that depressed you. You had what we would call an adjustment reaction with depression. That's what we would kind of technically call it. So 20 years of that, are you saying that you were still, for 20 years, at the same level of sadness?
No.
Okay.
No. I got over that, but I felt like, I got better and got over it because I was still on the antidepressant. That back in January, I stopped taking, with the doctor's advice, to stop taking that antidepressant. But I've no longer had those, feelings that I had when my father passed away. But
well, it could have been you were adjusting, Barb. It could have been you were adjusting. 20 years. Most people during some stretch of that time would get past their grief. So that's the first thing.
I'm past the grief. Maybe it's just me. I feel like I get angry again all the time.
Well, there's possibly that the meds have a certain overall calming effect. Maybe, given that. However, the research on antidepressant medications is that they're not all that effective. They are more effective if there's a biochemical basis for the depression as opposed to a life depression or a thinking depression or an adjustment depression, which is the bulk of depressions, by the way. So that said, you've come to rely upon it. You've come to believe, and maybe there's a placebo component involved. Placebo meaning you think it works. It works because you think it works. Over these years, you cut it out, and you said, oh, whoa, I noticed right away, quick. Oh, I'm different. Get back on it. That may have been just simply, after all those 2 decades of being on it. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm just throwing out possibilities.
Yeah.
After all that time of being on it, that you just forgot what it felt like to not be on it. All right.
Yeah.
So that said, I would talk to your doctor and say, okay, when I went off it, here's what I felt like. And your doctor may say, let's give it a month. Let's find out. That may pass. You may find that feeling of, oh boy, I need that, or else I start to feel really depressed or anxious or nervous or angry, or whatever feeling it is that you think resurges in you will pass. Now, the other question. Do I not have enough faith that I don't need this medication? And the fact that I do need this medication, does this mean I don't have enough faith? Not necessarily.
Yeah, that's the question.
Well, sure. Not necessarily. First of all, as I said, there are certain depressions that are biochemically based. And that means something's wrong up there. Neurochemically, something is wrong up there. And the church would say medication is perfectly fine to get the body back into the place it was intended to be by God. Now, that's one. Mm-hmm. If, in fact, there's a lot going on with you regarding I need the meds, regarding I feel better on the meds, regarding I'm scared to go off the meds, all of that stuff, it doesn't mean your faith is weak. But what you could do is say, I want to do what I can so that I don't need these meds. And that may mean have some therapy. It may mean having your doctor slowly wean you off of them. It may mean let's see what happens if I stay off them for a month, like the doctor said. Get past this. Because very possibly what happened was, and here's what I see a lot of, Barb. People develop an awful lot of bad thinking habits. They look at life a certain way. They look at people a certain way. They look at themselves a certain way. And those things get entrenched. And that's the way they function. And until they realize that what they're doing to themselves is causing them to feel depressed or discontent or nervous or anxious or unhappy, until they realize that stuff keeps going. Let's say that Barb came into my office and she said, I was on antidepressants for 20 years. I would want to explore why she thought she needed them for 20 years. When she said I'd pretty much gotten over the grief of my father's death, maybe several months, perhaps a year, what else was going on in her life, or what else was she interpreting about what was going on in her life that kept her in a state of off and on blue mood? What's going on? Did she have some kind of relationship with her dad that when he passed away, that changed her social functioning, that she had to live on her own, or that it affected how she viewed independence? Whatever it might be, what reverberating effect kept going? On the antidepressants, was it habit? Was it the belief of, as long as I'm on this, I'm okay? She could have talked to her doctor and said, the dose that I'm on, would that dose be necessarily effective? Or is it such a small dose or moderate dose that my body would get used to it and it cease to have its effect? You'd want to know about that. I would go after Barb's thinking on this, which is, what is it about her reliance on these antidepressant meds that she convinced herself she needed it, and that her doctor said, you might want to think about functioning without these? Then she said, okay. And when she did, she said, did you notice what she said? She said, I became angrier easier. Well, that's not necessarily a depressive symptom. Could be a sign of agitation. And was the agitation fed by coming off the medication? You know, the rebound effect, the body's saying, okay, I got used to functioning on that governor that you put in me all those years, and now you took the governor away, and now the body rebounds and says, oh, I'm a little excited here, a little agitated. So I think that's a factor. So she said, if I had more faith, would I be less depressed? I wrote a section of a book that I have on that. And in most cases, that's not a one-to-one relationship. It's not a, I'm depressed because I don't have enough faith in God. Now, that said, I think it's safe to say with more faith in God, with security, now people are going to say I'm playing with words on this one, with security, with peace in your relationship with God, it is less likely you will be knocked around by the stuff of life. And the stuff of life is what can make you depressed. So in that sense, if she says, wouldn't my faith in God be enough? Well, it would be, depending upon how much you let it infuse your life. It's one thing to say, well, I believe in God and I love the Lord, but if he doesn't really significantly enter your life and your peace and your decisions, then you can have the same struggles that we all have. I think it's safe to say, and research says this, religious people, faithfully religious people, are less prone to anxiety and depression. Of the, what they used to call exogenous type, meaning life, meaning thinking, meaning circumstances. They are less prone because there is an eternal perspective for them. And there is prayerful peace for them. And there is grace for them that they come to rely upon every day. God is an absolutely significant part of their life that infuses how they think and how they do and how they react. Yes, that in fact there's a strong correlation between deeper faith, deeper religion, and less anxiety and less depression. But to say that for Barb, I don't know, because there would be a lot you'd have to explore on that. Sounds like a weaseling out answer, doesn't it? Hey, I'm a psychologist. It all depends. One of my favorite phrases. Dr. Ray.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866 Ave Maria or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Hello, Steve Ray here from Footprints of God Pilgrimages. The land of our Lord and Our Lady is calling us. We're heading back to the Holy Land over Christmas break this year. We have the best, most reliable guides and services awaiting us. The holy sites are open, and the local Christians are anxious to see us. Galilee, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Bethlehem. No crowds, no lines. Hope you can join us.
Find the Ave Maria Radio travel tab at AveMariaRadio.net.
Strained or broken relationships are a given in most of our lives. Friends fall away, siblings drift apart, children sever ties with their parents, and despite our best efforts, these painful fissures are difficult to mend. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray. If you want to learn how to communicate better with the difficult people in your life and be a more easygoing, more forgiving person, check out my book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. Check it out. And all my other books on the store page at AveMariaRadio.net. That's AveMariaRadio.net.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
This is from C.S. Lewis, Letters to an American Lady, 1961. May God's grace give you the necessary humility. Try not to think, much less speak, of their sins. One's own are a much more profitable theme. And Lewis has a way of saying things, doesn't he? Who would ever think of sins as a profitable theme? And if on consideration you can find no faults on your side, then cry for mercy. For this must be a most dangerous delusion. I've heard priests say that they have had to really help folks coming to confession who begin by saying, Father, I can't really think of anything. And I guess that comes down to what you define as a sin. You know, well, I haven't shot anybody, haven't stolen anything, I haven't lit a fire any place. So if you limit sins to those big things, then you could probably say, yeah, I haven't done any of that. But what about the stuff of day to day? Treatment of people. Self-absorption, self-centeredness, self-seeking, self-aggrandizement, vanity, holier than thou, argumentative, snarkiness, all kinds of permeating social types of sins that if you pay attention to them, they're all over the place. We all got them. So when you go into confession, you say, Father, I can't think of anything. Then you might want to spend a little more time taking a look inward before you go into the confessional, so you can at least have something to say. C.S. Lewis says, yeah, that's a dangerous delusion when you think you don't have any sins. Thanks for joining me here on The Doctor Is In on Look Back Friday. Thanks, Andrew Kruchek, for everything you do there. Walk with God.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.